So welcome today. I wanted to introduce my authors to you. This is Inkspell Publishing's Magic and Mischief anthology, and we're getting together today to talk about our stories and our writing and all of the exciting things we have going on. I'm going to have some questions for them, but let's begin by having them tell a little bit about themselves, where they live, where viewers can find you, like do you have a website or Facebook? And let's get some introductions going. We're going to start with VK.
Morning, everybody. I'm an author based in South Australia, though I'm originally a Kiwi, so I do have a New Zealand accent still. You can see Port Lincoln over the shoulder from me, which is my current hometown. And I've been writing for a few years now. So this is my first anthology that I've ever done, so I'm excited to work with you guys on this one. And you can check me out at my website, which is www.vktritchler.com.
Wonderful, thanks. And Mark Love, will you share some information about you?
All right. Good day, everybody. I'm from the USA. I live in Michigan, been born and raised here. I've been seriously writing for about 10 years now. And this is my second anthology with Inkspell, although it's my first attempt at two aspects of it. One is a paranormal story, and the other is co-writing. So I had a collaboration with Nina Castle on this, which was a lot of fun and a great deal. So I don't have a website, but I do have a blog, and I'm on Facebook. My blog is motownmysteries@blogspot.com.
Wonderful. And we're going to go to your writing partner here, Ellie. And Ellie, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Nina Castle. Originally, I'm from Mumbai, India, but now I call Australia my home. I'm based in Victoria, in Melbourne, but quite far away from it. I'm in regional Victoria. I've been writing for a long time, but nothing has been published. So this is like my first publication with Inkspell, and also my first collaboration. I don't have a website yet, but I do have a Facebook author page. So if you just type in Ellie Nina Castle, you'll be able to find me.
Wonderful. We've got quite an international flair going on here. Let's go with Celia.
Hi, I'm Celia Mulder. I'm also from Michigan, born and raised here. And this is also my first paranormal fantasy. I'm a contemporary writer, mostly been published for a couple years now, but this is my first box set anthology. And let's see, I'm a librarian by day, and then I write whenever else I can. And my website is celiamulder.com.
I love that. You have a cape as a librarian, right? Superhero. All right, Liz, how about you?
Hi, my name is Liz Ashley. I'm out of Independence, Kentucky. This is my second anthology with Inkspell. I've been writing for as long as I can remember, since I was little. And you can visit me on the social media platform, usually Liz Ashley, and then also my website is Liz-Ashley.
Awesome, wonderful. And Mick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Mikael Lemieux. I'm from Ontario, Canada, about an hour outside Ottawa. I've been writing for about a year and a half now, and then this is also my first time writing an anthology, and I'm very excited. I typically write particularly in romance, so this is also a new change for me, writing paranormal, but it's very exciting. So.
Well, and your story, Mick, has a little romance in it, so you've combined both the paranormal and the romance here. And last but not least, Clara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I knew I'd make a mistake.
I write under the pen name of Clara Winter, and my heart is in Colorado, but I currently live in Southern California, where it's very hot today. I've been writing with Inkspell for about 2 years, and you can find me everywhere. I have a website, clarawinterbooks.com. I'm on Insta and Facebook and Twitter and all that.
Awesome. So let's talk about your stories that you wrote for us. So tell us a little bit about your story and where you got the idea for this inspiration for this story. VK, let's begin with you.
So my story is, I guess, a story of discovery, using a girl who finds out that she has the ability to jump between worlds. The idea actually is one that I'd been kicking around for a few years, and I'd started writing a book a long time ago, using the concept of what if all religions were correct, but only a piece of the story was in the religion. So if you took all of the different pieces and put them together, then that was the reality. So the concept with this book is that she's able to pass between worlds and universes. Her first jump she does accidentally and doesn't understand fully what she's doing. And she comes across an old school friend, like a childhood friend of hers, who she's not entirely sure that this is actually the same person. She gets a little bit confused around because he looks the same, but he's older and a little bit scary. And so it's that juxtaposition between finding yourself and then finding out what you're capable of, and the relationship between those two and how that develops as well. So
it is a very interesting story. I can't wait for everybody to read it. And Mark, can you tell us about your story? It's got a unique twist.
All right. Well, I started out when I first saw the call for the anthology, and I primarily write mysteries and romance mysteries, and I'd never done anything paranormal. And at the time, I was trying to think of maybe, try something different. And somewhere along the line, I came up with the idea of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but a modern twist to that. And at the same time, I was in communication with Ellie, and we were trading emails back and forth. And I said, I know nothing about paranormal, and I could use a little fresh insight. So I persuaded her to join me in this effort. And what started out to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs shifted to, I thought seven was too many for a novella. So then we came upon the idea of using the Greek gods instead, and it kind of snowballed from there. And it was really an adventure to write this, especially with a co-author here. So we had a lot of fun with this story. And it's a young lady who starts hearing voices and seeing visits from the Greek gods. And her roommate encourages her to, maybe it's time to talk to a psychiatrist because nobody else can see or hear these people, but her roommate hears her having conversations and thinks she's a little crazy.
All right, Ellie, why don't you take it from there and explain what your thinking was and how you got asked to be a part of this collaboration with Mark?
Sure. So it's exactly how Mark described it, and yeah, as Mark said, we were exchanging emails, and then suddenly I still remember the date. I think it was the 1st of December, and it was summer for me here because obviously I'm in the southern hemisphere, so it's summer, and I wake up to like this email, and then I see Mark's words or something along the lines of, there's this opportunity to write paranormal. And why don't you kind of, come along and kind of maybe help out with the adventure and, write this book along. And I read it about 6 times because I went into shock. And my first response was like, me, like out of everyone, it's like me. And I was like, okay. I was like, sure, like, why not? Like, I was in for the experience, and I just thought that maybe I'm at that time where, since I've been writing for so long, maybe it's just time to kind of build on that and maybe build on my skill. But the idea of it, as Mark said, came along where we were randomly talking about fairy tales, and then Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came into the conversation. And I was catching the train. I still remember this. I was catching the train on the way to work, and then I had this random thought: what if Snow White actually visited a psychiatric for some reason? And then we started building up from there, and then we realized that we were developing mini structures for a potential story. And this happened before the email, and then the email came along, and then everything just clicked, and it went from there.
Now, what personally, Ellie, did you add to this story? I mean, I kind of felt like when I was reading some of it, I could tell what parts were Mark. What did you add to the story?
So for me, it was about, I think it was more to do with, like, there's the kind of like an evil stepmother kind of dynamic, and like a strained relationship between my main character and the stepmother. And also, I guess, a few because I love music, so I kind of added a bit of like musical twist between the main character and her roommate. So I think there were those kind of elements that I added. And of course, I did contribute to like some of the interactions that she had with the Greek gods.
It's always fun. Thanks. Celia, I love the humor that you put into your stories. So tell us about what inspired you to write your story.
So my story, Curses, Quests, and Cuties, is another retelling of Rapunzel this time. And I have been wanting to write a Rapunzel retelling for a very long time, movies. And then I also read the book Cinder by Marie Sexton. It's one of her novellas, and I've read it about 10 times. So I wanted to do a gender swap fairy tale retelling. So I came up with Rapunzel. It's a gay romance retelling where the one main character is running from his family curse that says he has to go on a quest and fall in love and live happily ever after, and he doesn't really want to because he doesn't like being told what to do. And then the other character has been stuck in a tower for many, many years, and weird things happen in this tower. There's a lot of magic around it, and he's just kind of rolled with it for now because he doesn't know anything else until then through the window in his tower and changes his life.
And yes, there's lots of humor. All right, Liz, tell us about your story.
So my story is The Urn in the Attic, and it's basically exactly what the title says. So this trio of roommates, they find an attic in their, they find an urn in their attic, and following that, of course, they start to have these weird hauntings. And so falling forward, they're just kind of wondering what this is, who this is, and going on that journey. And I hope that the ending's kind of a twist. I don't know. I thought it was comical. So you'll just have to read that to find out. It came to me when I was in undergrad. We had to write a short story, and it had to be 4,000 words. Of course, this was a lot longer, and I had to keep it up a lot, which was difficult. But I wrote it because I didn't really feel comfortable writing romance in front of that my peers would read. It was kind of still new to me at the time, telling people like when I read these type of books. So it had a little bit of romance, but I really kind of tried to beef that up a little bit.
It's a very cute story. Mick, yours was an interesting one. There was a lot of, I think, sword play going on. Can you share with us about how you got the inspiration for your story?
Yeah, so my story actually I wrote back when I was in university, and it got shelved for a long time. And then when I saw the call for the anthology, I thought it would be a good fit, but it definitely needed a lot of changing because my writing wasn't nearly where it is now, and obviously there's a lot more to learn and to improve. But in general, what came from it was the situation currently in the world is what really inspired it, because the story starts with a young man who's free, can go anywhere, do anything, and that's exactly what he intends to do. And then he quickly ends up in a town and is trapped, and he's not just trapped physically, but then he's also trapped emotionally. And so him and his fellow protagonists fight together and connect, and do a lot of sword fighting and face a lot of danger to gain that freedom that I think a lot of people were really craving over the last few months. And so that's really where the inspiration in my story came from.
Well, and the sword fighting's pretty cool. I mean, you can't go wrong with that in a story. And Clara, what about your story? I love that you're tying in with some old characters, some familiar characters.
Yeah.
So people can continue their love.
Right. So my story, Everwood Academy, is a continuing story in my Mortal Kindred series. And at the time that series ends, my main character is 10 years old, And so I really wanted to kind of stick with her. And in this story, she's 16 now and finds herself at this paranormal academy. And I just was kind of inspired by what her life now might look like. And it looks very different from what it did 6 years ago. So that's kind of where we pick up.
Well, and it's fun because you get to revisit those characters.
Yeah.
And we talked about how people have fallen in love with a series, and now you're almost starting a whole nother series from this. And hopefully you'll continue to write in that so that we'll get to see more of her and her friends who you just introduced to us.
I hope so.
It's great. So we talked a little bit about our inspirations and our getting our ideas. So let's kind of delve into that writing process. How long did it take you to write this story? What are some things that are must-haves for you when you're writing? And particularly for this story, maybe you needed something in particular for this story. So we'll begin with VK.
Okay, well that's a curly one. I started writing the story quite a while ago, and you know when you kind of get into about 10,000 words and you're sitting on it and you kind of procrastinate a little bit, that's what I was doing with it. Like I'd add to it every now and again, but I hadn't really focused on it. So when the email came through, I went, I know exactly what I want to do with this. So I actually did a writing retreat with a couple of local authors. We went away to a tiny house on the beachfront in the middle of nowhere, and we sat there for the weekend, and I just banged through it. Because it wasn't that the story wasn't in my head, it's just I hadn't taken it from my head and put it onto the page. So it gave me a real opportunity to sit down and focus on it. And we like to, to be honest, that's kind of what I do with a lot of my stories, is I start them and then do a little bit of piecemeal, and then I'll get away for a weekend and just hammer through it. Because I can write fast when I choose to. But yeah, it's probably not the best technique for writing, and I probably wouldn't recommend it for people. Like if you're going to do it, I think you're supposed to write like 1,000 words a day or something. But at a stretch, you can do 10 to 20,000 words a day if you really put your mind to it.
Well, that's funny because one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of authors during this time is that they're needing that feet to the fire. I need to get this done. So that procrastination's been going on, and now that they have this date or this due that they are needing to get it done, that they're more likely to put the words on paper then. So you're sounding just like so many of us. Mark, what about this story and your writing? How long did it take you to do it? I mean, you had a challenge because you're writing with someone else.
That was definitely a challenge, but it was also very enabling for me because in addition to my efforts at writing, I teach at the local college, and that takes up a great deal of my time. And so I had to really segment when I was going to focus on writing, because if it was just me, I'd squeeze in a little here, a little bit there. And I don't work with an outline. I find it too restrictive. So I would have an idea for a scene that I would want to write, and I would communicate with Ellie and say, okay, here's what I'm going to work on. And she would say, okay, this is what I'm going to work on. And then as each one of us got a scene done, or at least a part of a scene done, we were trading it on a Google Doc so that we could give each other feedback and stuff. And one scene led to another, or the idea for another. And some of the changes that came up, I'm sitting there, and before I could even get the words out, Ellie's sending me a note saying, oh, what if we did this? I'm like, you stole my idea. Wait a minute. But this is the way we were linking, and it worked out very well. We started in early December, and if I remember right, we had a first draft that we had gone back and forth with a number of times that we sent to Melissa in the middle of March. And we sent it in on a Sunday, and on Monday I got a letter saying it was being accepted, although she wanted changes made, but she wouldn't tell us what they were until we signed the contract. I've never had anything come back that fast. So thank you, Melissa, for that. That made my whole year right there.
Well, Ellie, what can you add to that? Was it a challenge writing through the email back and forth with someone else?
I did actually view it as a challenge because I didn't know anything else. So my introduction to writing was writing in an email, and trading ideas in an email. And then it was just a question of, okay, we need to kind of find a ground zero to just have everything in one place rather than back and forth. And that's why Google Docs kind of came to our rescue. So it was just a question of actually copy pasting what we had written in emails and kind of expanding on that. and again, it was again a form of like communication, saying, okay, you're going to tackle this part of the story and I'll take on this part, because I'm getting more ideas for the latter part of the story, for example. And yeah, and it just kind of built on that. So Google Docs became a ground zero, not only to develop the story but also get some feedback. And it was very interesting to kind of get feedback in like a span of a few hours, so that you kind of know, okay, this is this is what Mark's looking at doing, and this is what I'm looking at doing, and where's the middle ground. So I had actually a lot of fun there. I didn't find it a challenge at all. It was a lot of fun and kind of just expanding on ideas, and sometimes I'd end up surprising myself, because you have this random spur of the moment ideas that just come across, and you're just like, okay, just go with it, and you kind of type it, and then Mark's like, you've actually stolen my idea, and I'm like, oh my god, this is surreal. Yeah, and then as Mark said, we started writing it early December, and then we finished it in mid-March. And then, yes, we sent it to you, and then I didn't expect you to get back so quickly, but I think that was my introduction to Melissa, the ever efficient person. So yeah, it was great.
I think there was a scream of delight when you saw the acceptance notice, because I could hear it from here. And
Yeah, I kind of sounded like Tarzan, maybe. Like low-key Tarzan, but a happy Tarzan, like just screaming.
Well, I'm glad that could help for you guys. Yeah, I'm sorry. I tend to be a little uber organized type person to get things done. So checklists. I've got one here in front of me. So it's the way I do things. All right, Celia, tell us about how long it took you to write your story, and anything that you must have had while you were writing the story.
So it's interesting that you said that everyone kind of needs their feet to the fire right now. That's how this one was. I said I was going to do it, and then I hadn't written it yet. So I also wrote the whole first draft in a writing weekend in April. So that was the fastest I've written first draft of anything. And other than it went pretty quickly after that. Because it was a shorter piece. So I'd say I don't tend to be a very fast writer, so this kind of surprised me at the turnaround. One of my necessities that I always have to have is a playlist for each book. So this one was a lot of pretty sappy songs, and there's a lot of Taylor Swift on there. There's just a lot of like feel good, upbeat songs, which is very different from what I was listening to when I was writing my other series. So this was a good break from all of the happy club dance hits that I was listening to for that book. I'd say the most challenging part was I was editing, I got the edits from Melissa at the same time I got the edits for my second book of my series that's coming out in September. And so I was trying to go back and forth and be as fast as I could on both of them, which is a struggle for me. So so that was definitely the most challenging part. But I think otherwise it was this story just it had been sitting around in my head for so long that when I finally sat down to write it, it was all there.
Well, you are definitely going to have to share that playlist and put it into a blog, and we can put it up on the website so people can listen to the playlist, or get to see the playlist that goes along with the song or with the story. So that'll be a lot of fun. All right, Mick, tell us, I know you said you started writing this when you were in university, so tell us about how long did it take once you got your feet back to it?
Yeah, so well, when I was in school, actually, it took me a long time. I'm gonna say at least 6 months when I was writing it. But at the time, I was still kind of learning how to write in English, because my first language is French. So I struggled quite a bit at the beginning of this. But then once I got back into it in right around March, I'd say it took me a good 2 weeks to really to clean it up and ready it, and it went fairly well. My process is fairly strict. I get up early in the morning. I make sure I have my outline and everything set up. And what I do is I typically assign a person that I know to a character, and I kind of just walked them through the outline of whatever decisions they would typically do. And so they kind of just walk through the story for me. So it typically goes fairly well. And my must-haves through my project, I always have a ton of snacks. My desk is just filled with munchies. And I always have my guitar close by. And I'd love to be able to say like I jam out doing some like Jimi Hendrix style stuff, but I'm often also jamming out with some Taylor Swift. So
I can tell we're going to have some musical guests coming on. So, Clara, what about yours? I know that this is a story that ties into your other ones. Was this like an inkling when you were writing your other series?
It was an inkling. And so when I sat down to write it, this was pre-COVID, it went by really fast because I need dead silence and quiet in my house. And of course, my husband's at work, my son's at school. So in those conditions, I can write really fast. I probably wrote this in about 3 weeks. But now with everyone home, it's been a little more challenging to get the words on the page. But my must-haves, besides quiet, are coffee Rios. They're little coffee candies that I get at Trader Joe's. And I just eat those all day long. I have an open package and I'm just snacking constantly.
Tell me that they are sugar-free or something so that I can feel good? No?
I don't think they are. No. They're
That's
so
the
good.
problem with your snacks, your candies, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Liz, did we skip you? I'm so sorry. Let's go back and you can tell me about your writing with this story and what you must have, because I'm sure there's got to be some music to it.
No, actually, usually I do listen to a lot of music, but this time I didn't. I was one of those people that needed a fire under my butt. I just graduated with my master's degree in English, and then I also am planning a wedding. So I had a lot going on, and trying to sit down and actually write this, my brain just wasn't having it. So in April, I finally sat down and I did it in a weekend, like some other people. And I kind of, this time, normally I write the whole thing and then I go through and edit it. This time I was so just, I guess, horrified. I had to somehow take that 4,000 words and make it bigger. So sitting down and doing that just wasn't going to happen. So as I wrote it, I edited it and kind of tried to lengthen it and think about it. And I think the weirdest thing was my fiance and I moved in together, and I'd never, I guess, written anywhere but my house, you could say. So to have him walk out of his office space and see me just like giving a death glare at the laptop because I was just like, I need to get this finished, was kind of embarrassing. So that also is a little weird.
It is very challenging when you start adding in other people to your space. You know, as Clara mentions, you know, somebody else talking, or in my case, it's television or something like that. You know, sometimes we need that space. So it is different, isn't it, Liz? So we talk about many times, write what you know. So how do we do that with paranormal? What kind of research did you have to do? Or does it all completely come up out of your head? So VK, how did you come up with this one? Where did you get that research from?
I would like to say I spent hours in the library researching, but to be honest, that didn't happen at all. So a lot of it is just completely out of my head. Some of it is from watching too much television.
Now, it's also interesting to see, I know that a couple of you have mentioned, like Mick did, about characters and people you know. So be sure to mention those family and friends who end up in your story. Okay, Mark, how about you? Any research for this story? Psychology degree in your future?
No, I don't think a psychology degree, but I did interview some people over the years that have had different backgrounds, including a psychiatrist, not as a patient, just merely for information. And I have never killed anybody that I'll admit to in any of my stories. That's actually somebody I know. But I did a lot of reading about some paranormals, and I've always been a fan of a lot of movies and things that are involved with ghosts and paranormal type situations. So that was it. And then just because a lot of this story is set in the Metro Detroit area where I'm originally from, I did some research about things that would take place around there, because the story opens with an ice festival in the wintertime at the city of Plymouth, which I used to go to with some frequency. And of course, it all depends on whether the weather is cooperating. But I was looking at that. I was looking at some of the different restaurants and things where we set some of the scenes. So some research on there, but a lot of it just goes back to movies and other books that I've read.
Now, was that a challenge for you, Ellie? Because you're not from Detroit. This was a whole nother planet for you. And who was the one who came up with the Greek gods and did that type of research?
That would be me. So I'm a history buff. So one of my favorite subjects growing up was history. So when this random idea of the Greek gods kind of came in, I was just like, this is my area. If I could make a t-shirt, like a customized t-shirt, I think I would create like I Heart Research, because I love doing research. So for me, it was just going back and revisiting a bit of familiar history, because I did study a bit of Greek history in school. So it was just building up on that. So I just made sure that the information that I got was credible. And that's why I love Google as well, because it's a place where you can get lots of information as long as you know how to find the information. So I did a bit of research, which I loved, on the Greek gods, to kind of build up and give the reader a better idea of what the four gods actually stood for. And then when it came to, because of the location, of course, I'm on the opposite side of the world. I'm in Australia. So Mark was very kind. So he would actually send me links, and then sometimes I'd go on the Google Maps and kind of use the tiny man and kind of jump in to kind of have a look around the area to kind of better understand the setting and the location. So I'm more of like a visual and an immersive learner. So if I immerse myself in my environment, I feel I can learn better. So yeah, it was like, apart from writing the book, I kind of learned a lot about like Michigan and Detroit, so which is amazing.
And maybe you'll get a chance to come and visit.
Yes, yes, I'm open to that, but I don't know when that's going to happen given the circumstances right now.
Yeah, nobody's visiting anywhere right now, right?
Yeah.
All right. Celia, you were talking about how this has been one of your stories in your head. So did you go and watch like Tangled, and did you, read up again on the different Rapunzel stories?
Yeah, I did watch Tangled again, just because I had to. But I mostly, read a lot of fairy tales growing up, so I have them pretty well memorized. And Rapunzel was always one that me and my sisters would play, and we for some reason thought that Rapunzel was radishes, but they're not. Rapunzel is an actual plant. So anyways, so we would always eat radishes and then have to get taken off to a tower. It was very weird, but I had the fairy tale pretty well down in my head, so that was easy. Mostly I don't research before I go into the first draft. I just like to kind of spew it all into the page and then see what happens, because I really can't visualize spatially without having a map. So I definitely had to do it for this one because I got very confused about where things were in the tower. And then my other point of research, or just like thinking it through, was actually because I normally write contemporary. So magic, like the rules of magic and how magic worked in my story, that was quite a challenge for me. I found myself in the first draft just saying things like magic. It's that all happened. It's just magical and no one can explain it. So I had to get some advice from my friends who write fantasy and paranormal to figure out what rules I needed to have and kind of do that world building part, which is not usually something that I do quite as much in contemporary.
It was very interesting, the tower, everything inside it. And so people are going to love that aspect of it, that you spent so much time on it. Liz, any dead bodies in your new place? What are we going to find? An urn laying around?
Hopefully not. That would be terrifying. Goodness no. So I think with mine, I didn't have to do a lot of research just because there isn't really anything I feel like that you wouldn't find in real life. It was just that layer of ghosts. So I kind of drew back on years and years of watching ghost hunters and kind of the things that they would say and kind of, I guess, any research ideas that came from that. And I used it in the story where I could. The biggest kind of thing that I had to look up, which is weird because a lot of people in my family are actually cremated, was what the place is called where you put all the urns, and it was called a columbarium, and that was just the most interesting thing. And now I tell many people that, and it's probably really weird.
I love that the research ends up showing up in our lives every day. We just mention random things. Mick, what kind of research did you have to do for this story? Any shadow warriors out there?
Actually, so like we mentioned before, I wrote this story when I was in university. Luckily for me, I went to the Royal Military College of Canada, which is kind of like West Point in the States, I guess you can compare the two. And we're required to do a lot of combatives classes, and there's a lot of fencing that goes on at school. So you mentioned those sword fights prior to. Well, I spent a lot of time with the fencing club to figure out exactly how I would be able to figure these sword fights out in the story. And my combatives instructor threw me on the ground enough times for me to figure out how a fight scene should kind of look.
You probably had the bruises to show it, huh?
Well, yeah.
All right, Clara. So how are we going to handle witches, a dragon shifter, and vampires? Did you have to do any research?
You know, I didn't, because I've already written 5 books in that world. So I kind of already had my magical system and everything already laid out. So all I had to do was really pull off of what I've already done.
What about, since she is a student at the university or going back to school, you know, like a magical university, did you have to think back to those years when we were back in school and how that was and how to be a teenager and angst?
Yes, for sure. How she deals with the mean girls and the cute boys. Yeah, I definitely did that.
I always throw those kind of things in too. So I just want to do a couple more last few questions here, but since this is a paranormal series, is there something paranormal in your life? Have you ever had an experience that was paranormal? Maybe it was a ghost, or you're hearing sounds, or somebody that, you know, you thought was still alive, you know, contacting you, or somebody who you found out was already passed? We'll start with you, VK. Any paranormal events happening around you?
I hear there's a lot happening in Australia in general, but I haven't seen much. They do claim that they have panthers that roam around Victoria and New South Wales. Again, I have yet to see a single panther. But look, from the story that I wrote, there could be a parallel universe out there somewhere where there's me doing the interview and telling you all these wonderful tales, but not this universe, unfortunately.
Those extra universes would be so helpful at times. So, Mark, any paranormal going on for you in Detroit?
I've had a few experiences with that, and I recalled one just now. My wife's grandfather had passed away years ago, and about a month after he had passed, I was over at his widow's house, and I was cleaning the gutters or something, and I walked into the garage to get a ladder, and there was a little lawn chair that he always sat on, and he always smoked his pipe, and he'd be sitting outside. Well, when I first got there, the lawn chair was hanging up on the wall where I'd put it. When I came back in the garage, it was down on the floor, set it up, and I could smell pipe tobacco. And this was a month after he had passed. That was kind of creepy.
Oh, it just sounds like he was there to thank you for cleaning those gutters. I know that I would be there. Ellie, what about you? Any paranormal events going on in your life?
I don't know whether this would be like paranormal or something weird. But usually I have an inkling when someone is going to pass away. They usually flash in my face, like in a dream, and I never dream. So I'm usually a person who just sleeps. Like I'm as dead as a log when I sleep. But it just happened quite recently where my second grade teacher passed away. But I think 2 days before she passed away, I kind of dreamt about her. And then I got the news that she had passed. Yeah. And in terms of ghosts, I mean, I have I think I have had an encounter. It was in Perth. So before I moved to Victoria, I was in Western Australia and I was in a rented place. And I remember this one distinct time where I was like, I was in my room, I was on the study table and I was writing something, but suddenly the temperature just like dropped, and it was summer's day and the temperature dropped. It was as good as like winter temperatures, single digit, and I could just feel something like close to my neck, and I got this very weird tingling sensation across my body, and I knew that there was something, but there wasn't anything, and it lasted for a good 10 to 15 minutes.
Wow, that's a little scary there. Hopefully that's
Yeah.
the only time you've ever had that, and we will just not have that happen again.
Yeah, I just, in my head, I was just like, I come in peace, like, I'm not going to, like, come on your turf. So, like, whatever you have in mind, like, I just don't want any part of it. It's just like, just do your thing and I'll just do mine. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, it was a
they do say ignoring it is better than trying to acknowledge it, because you don't want to make it more clear to you. So.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that, like the frequency kind of just changed and the temperatures just like dropped when it was like blasting hot outside. I was just like, yeah, it's better not to engage. Like, I'm not the one who'd like, establish contact or do anything like that. I'm just like, you just stay in your lane and I'll just stay in mine. Like, I'm happy like that.
I would have been too. All right, Celia, any magical events happening there? Did you ever have a hair grow long out the window or anything?
No, kind of the same thing as Ellie, though. I always like, even though I know that there are paranormal things going on in the world, I'd rather not encounter any ghosts. Thank you. I did once share a room at a writing conference with a woman who was a witch, and she told me all about the people who had been in the hotel before us. And I told her that this was not a very comforting bedtime chat, and I would really prefer us to stay on more during our time at the conference. So that's kind of my point of view. I love reading paranormal, but yeah, I'm terrified that I'm actually going to run into a ghost someday.
And then it won't be like Casper and friendly. All right, Liz, how about you? You've got some houses that you've lived in, different places. Anything going on in Kentucky?
No, I think I was actually in Florida when I had my experience. It was my friend, I went on vacation with her, and we stayed at her great Aunt Dorma's house. And we were sharing this little twin bed, and this, it was an older house in a room. And we had just finished watching BuzzFeed Unsolved, so I'll preface it with that we could have just scared ourselves. But we're laying there, and it felt like somebody grabbed my toe. And I'm like, Megan, did you grab my toe? And she said, no, I didn't. And the next day, I was mentioning it to her mom, and she's like, oh no, she said, that's the thing that great uncle, and then his name, would do. And then she's like, I think he died in that bed. So a little creepy and disgusting, but kind of a fun story.
We're not sleeping over at your friend's house. Never again. Mick, how about you? Ever have any paranormal experiences in your lifetime so far?
So I can't recall any type of paranormal experiences that I may have had, like ghosts or anything like that. But I definitely have experienced and strongly believe in kind of like the magical ideas of like an emotional connection, and how like strong emotions can fuel ideals and like belief in destiny and fate. So that we see that like sometimes, you just meet someone and it just goes so well and it just feels like magic and it feels like destiny. So I haven't felt anything like ghosts or anything, but I definitely, there's a lot of stuff out there that definitely feels magical, and I know I've experienced emotions between people that represent that.
Very exciting. Clara, how about you? Any experiences?
Well, I've had several throughout my life, but I am a seeker of the paranormal, so I seek out any sort of haunted location there is, whether it's the Queen Mary over here in Long Beach or the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. If I am within 100 miles of a haunted location, you can guarantee that I've been there. So yes, I have.
That's interesting that you like to go to places like that and see the different things. And would you say, are you more excited or more scared about what you might find?
I think I find it more exciting. I don't think I've ever really been scared of an experience before.
Well, you certainly draw on it for your stories, so I love that. Last question, and we're really hoping that nobody will have any negative reviews, but they are a fact of being an author. There's somebody out there who doesn't like something. So how do you handle when you get a negative review or somebody says, I don't like this part of your story, or that can't be true, obviously. VK, what do you think?
Well, I can only base it on what I got from a lady once. The first book that I did, I self-pubbed, and because I wasn't confident enough to go to a publishing house. And it wasn't edited well enough. And the reviews coming back were, they loved the story, but it needed work on the editing. And this lady gave it like a 1 star and said, oh, you know, it totally distracted from it because it needed heavy editing. But then she put a little comment at the end saying, oh, the story actually wasn't too bad. And I thought, I'm just going to hold on to the end bit. I think you got to have fairly tough skin in this industry, and you only get better by learning. And as you write more, you get better at it, and you learn the pitfalls and things to avoid and things to look out for. And I don't think there's ever going to be one reader that reads all of your work and loves it. I mean, I've read some of my favorite authors' books and gone, what were they thinking when they wrote this? Like, you know. And so I think we all go through phases of loving a work or not loving a work, and it depends where you are in your life when you read the book too. You can pick a book up that you hated 10 years ago and love it now. So I try to take it all with a grain of salt and try to maybe do it a little bit better next time.
It's very thoughtful and insightful because it is hard. Mark, bad reviews, how do you handle it?
I've got a thick skin being a writer. You get accustomed. You can't please everybody. You do the best you can. And somebody once told me, you know, reviews are opinions and they're like noses. Everybody's got one. They may not be exactly what you want, but, you know, maybe you can take some feedback out of that and you get to improve down the road. So it's something I just try and do the best I can with what I'm working on and keep my stories engaging and try and throw a few twists in there.
Ellie, this is going to be your first time dealing with this. How are you thinking you're going to handle this? Because it is hard to get somebody who says that they don't love your baby as much as you do.
That's true. I'm just going to, I guess I'm going to draw from my life experience, because I've had like encounters where people have told me, like, they've actually told me to my face that I'm not good enough. So, you know, it's just like I've kind of dealt with those things personally, and I've kind of learned from that. So it's just like, as Mark said, and I guess everyone here kind of agrees, you can't please everyone. And, you know, you just hold on to the intention of you writing the book. And of course, I'm all for constructive criticism. I mean, and that's something that I learned a lot during the editing process with you, where you would like add something. And it's very important to kind of separate yourself from your piece at that given point of time, because it's another person who's kind of viewing it and who's not as invested as you are. So sometimes it's like you get a lot of clarity from seeking feedback, and I always enjoy feedback. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the reviews, because I just want to see what people think about. And like, of course, if they like, you know, if someone like criticizes one part, I think I want to secretly go back to the book and kind of see like, and try to understand it from their eyes and see like what doesn't click for them.
Well, that sounds very insightful. Celia, do people ever rub you the wrong way with these reviews? How do you handle it?
I got very much a trial by fire with my first book. It was in the middle of a Twitter flame war, so the subject of one is really nasty, and hopefully it's buried enough now on Twitter that everyone's forgotten. So anyways, I learned a lot during that, and what I learned was don't read my reviews. So that's what I've been doing, and I haven't looked at them since. That was last year. So I'm always grateful for people for writing reviews and for taking the time to share their thoughts, but I'm not gonna spend my time worrying about kind of like especially the really nasty 1-star ones.
Well, you have to be proud of, even if there was that Twitter war, your book was nominated for a pretty big award as well. So you get the highs and the lows, I guess. Liz, how do you handle it? You've got 2 books out now, the anthology.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So I usually take bad reviews to heart. I'm kind of that person that negativity kind of like weighs me down a little bit. So I try to not read reviews, and I just was so curious, and I wanted to know what people were thinking. And of course, there's always some bad ones, but then I think too, part of it is always that everybody's different. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. Like one of my reviewers had said, they gave me 3 stars, and they were like, oh, I just, I don't know what it was. I just wasn't into the book. Maybe it's just the way I'm feeling today or something like that. So I think it's just important to realize that everybody's different. Everybody has different opinions. And I mean, I've carried around a book. I love Kylie Scott. She's an Australian writer, and she's amazing. But there was one book of hers in particular that I just couldn't get through. And it's like, if I can't get through an author that I love, then I shouldn't expect my readers. So I take constructive criticism where I can and just kind of try and, ride out the stuff that I need to block out.
It is hard though, isn't it? When you're having somebody say something and you're just like, oh, that's not what I needed to hear today. Mick, what do you do with negative reviews? How do you handle it?
So I always make it a point to read every review everywhere I can, and I always take as much information as I can from my beta readers and my author group that we hang out together. In general, I really just try to learn from it, and I won't necessarily adjust my work based on the reviews, but I'll always try to better myself as an author based on what they're telling me, because whether it's a 5-star or 1-star review, whether what they're saying is directly applicable to this work or not at all, to me, in every review that I receive, there's something in there that can make me better at what I'm doing. And so that's what I try to take out of reviews, and that's how I try to move forward with them.
It's a great way of looking at it, learning and improving yourself. Clara, what about you? Negative reviews, how do you handle them?
Well, I read all my reviews, and I had one pretty bad review from a blogger who reads and blogs only about young adult novels. And for some reason, she read the first book of my Immortal Kindred series, which is very much an adult series. And that's kind of what her review was based on, was the adult content of my book, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about that. So it did kind of hurt my feelings, but you just have to grow that tough skin, and there are some things that are just out of your control, and just move on and focus on the constructive feedback and things that you can work on, and just let the other ones fall away.
Well, hopefully some of the other people who are watching this will take some of those advice that you've given them to heart, because I think that's really important. You can't please everyone. And I think the best thing that authors do is that they put little pieces of themselves in their work. And so we want to bring lightness, we want to bring healing, we want to bring positivity to the world. And so hopefully people will find that in our stories. Before we go, I want to just quickly go through everybody one more time, say where people can get a hold of you, where they can find you, so that we can hopefully have some of our viewers reach out to you and tell you how much they love your stories. So VK, if you could.
My main point, I guess, is my website, which is thevktritzer.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. But yeah, definitely hit me up. I love to hear from my readers.
And VK, you have another story coming out this year. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I am actually. So my next one coming out is The Risky Business of Romance. It's obviously a romance. It's in the title. But it's based in South Australia. It's got a bit of a thrill in it. It's a suspense romance, so there's a little bit of drama. The lead character in it, I like her because she's not entirely lovable, but you grow to love her anyway, so I like that about her.
Very exciting. Mark, tell us about where we can find you and if you've got any projects coming up.
All right. You can find me on Facebook, on Amazon. My blog is motownmysteries.blogspot.com. I'm trying to do a newsletter every month and a couple of posts there as well. I am also on Twitter and Instagram occasionally under Motown Mysteries. That's where I'm at. I'm currently about halfway into the next novel on my other series with Jefferson Shane. And Ellie's going to kill me, but I'm going to say it that she and I are already talking about the possibility of collaborating on another story.
Wonderful. We do need that sequel to What Happens to Her Roommate, so hopefully we'll get to hear about that. Ellie, where can people find you, and what are you currently working on?
All right, so because I'm like fairly new, I've just set up my author page on Facebook. So if you type in Eddie Nina Castle, you'll be able to find me there. Also, I have an author email account, so I'm happy for anyone to contact me there. So that's Eddie Nina Castle all together, no punctuations, at gmail.com. I'm currently working on, as actually you actually took my idea out of my head. I'm actually working on something related to Solana's roommate. So that's coming along quite well. I'm a healthy 5,000 to 6,000 words maybe.
That's going to be exciting, so I can't wait. Celia, we've got a big release coming on in your series this year, and where can people find you, and tell us what you're currently working on?
So you can find all my links to my social media on my website, which is celiamulder.com. I mostly am on Instagram. My handle is also Celia Mulder on there. And then I have been being pretty consistent on my monthly newsletter. It was one of my goals for 2020. So far 6 months in, and I've done 6 newsletters. So you can sign up for that on my website, and I'd say that's probably the best way to keep up. So you have the sequel in my Celebrity Spin Doctor series. The second book is called The Issue with Antons, and you can expect the same ridiculous culture, lots of unlikable characters who you kind of also like, and you kind of want to see them change, but also know they're not going to. So there's mystery, there's some, undercover adventures, there's a big party they all get trapped at for a very long time. So I'm very excited about that. That comes out at the end of September. I also do have another anthology that will be self-published with my writing group, and that's going to be holiday themed, end of year holidays. So I have a New Year's themed short story in that.
Awesome. Can't wait. Liz, you've got a book coming out, and where can people find you?
So I have a book coming out in October called Heart's a Mess. It is about, it dabbles in, I guess you could say, faith healing, but more so kind of the false side of faith healing, and a romance kind of comes out of that, which is weird to say, but I hope it comes across on the page, how it works out. And my readers can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, but I'll be honest and say that the Twitter is a mystery to me, so I don't use the Twitter too often. And I also have a website, and it's liz-ashley.com.
Great, wonderful. Mick, where can we find you, and what are you currently working on? I know you've got one in the pipeline as well.
So my readers can find me. I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Mikael Lemieux or Northern More Writing. I always make it a point to respond to all my readers. So if you do reach out to me, know that I will actively respond, and I love talking to my readers. So please do so. Currently, I have a book that they'll be coming up with Inkspell in July 2021, Promise Keeper. So it's still a while now, and so we're just waiting on moving forward that process. And right now, I'm actually not working on anything else other than that project.
Hopefully, you'll find some more time to get some writing in, because it's always exciting. And Clara, what about you? Where could we find you, and what are you currently working on?
You can find my links also on my website, clarawinterbooks.com. I'm mostly on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm currently working on a young adult historical murder mystery, which is completely new to me, so having fun with that.
That sounds Interesting. Can't wait to see about that one. All right, and of course you can find Inkspell Publishing on inkspellpublishing.com as our website, or we're on Facebook as Inkspell Publishing. So please check out our forthcoming anthology. It releases July 13th. It is Magic and Mischief, and there is sure to be both in the stories. Thank you.